Hey out there, survivors, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Survive Interviews. Today we have another outlaw showing up. This is the man who always makes sure that you pay up what's owed. That is right, everybody. I have everybody's favourite loan shark, Leopold Strauss, Howard Pinhasik, here on the show. Howard, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi. I don't know about their favorite loan shark. I mean,
Well, not the people.
like their most hated loan shark.
Not the people on the that owe the money, but the people that are going to benefit from you taking the money. So the other gang members, you're their favorite loan shark.
Yeah, I guess.
Howard, I'm delighted to have you here. As I said to you off air, we've had some great interviews so far with some of your castmates, and it's just always such a joy because something like this, even though it was this gigantic experience, it feels like it was very personalized and very individual for everybody involved, as much as it was a group experience. So I love hearing all the stories from the making of this masterpiece.
It was an experience, let me tell you. I mean, 5 years of it was...
I was going to say I can imagine, but I don't think I can. Like, as in, I mean, from your perspective, that first day arriving to set, and I mean, you've been on TV and film in the past, but walking in and seeing the giant soundstage and getting put in a silly suit, and like, what was going through your mind when that was happening?
It was unreal, you know. I mean, I don't know. I talked about this the other day because I did that interview, but my experience was kind of maybe somewhat unique. I had been, this was 7 years ago now.
Jeez.
In the spring is when this happened. I was all set. They would put you on hold for like 3 weeks at a time. And then they would write and they put you on hold. So the first time I was put on hold, the day before I was scheduled to be on hold anyway, I fell down the stairs of my house, like outside. I broke my leg in two
Jesus.
places. It was really bad. So I had to call my agent that night and say, you better let them know I can't do this. And I didn't even really know what it was I was doing. I just knew it was this video game because nobody told us what exactly it was. But I was really upset about it. And I kind of mentioned that this has happened to me. This kind of stuff has happened to me numerous times where the worst luck of your life happens. And then something out of it comes that's better than you could have imagined. So what happened was I was basically incapacitated for about 6 months. I couldn't walk at all.
Jesus.
And I was in a lot of pain. And it took me a really long time before I was mobile again. And right around the 6-month period, I got a call from my agent saying that they wanted me to do the game. And so I went, I was like, thank God I could walk at that point, but I was still not in really great shape. And so the first day I got there, it's like a totally weird environment. It's like something I've never experienced in my entire life. And the first day we were filming, I think it was in the wintertime, and it was one of those scenes where we're all in the cabin or wherever it was together. And they kept asking me to climb up and down a bunk, and I did it, but I remember thinking, God, I hope I'm going to be able to do this, because I was still in kind of a bit of pain. And that was my first experience, and I didn't have to say a lot that day, so that was a good thing.
Yeah.
And then I think the next day I came in and I had to do those campfire scenes where we talk about our past. And so that was a little better because I could just sit.
Yeah.
It was kind of I just sometimes I keep thinking, because I've had this happen to me like a number of times, where something that seemed like the end of the world, and then all of a sudden out of that, something great happened.
That's so uplifting, though, because I think especially at this time with everything that's going on and what people are going through, even for myself, I had a movie that was due to come out in April, It did come out in April, but it was meant to have like, you know, a premiere, and I was meant to go to LA, and I had all meetings set up and all that stuff, and it was like, I'm finally doing it. I'm finally doing the stuff you're supposed to do as a filmmaker. Yes! As a little dude from Ireland, you don't think I'm going to get to LA and have a premiere and go to... And then, yeah, like literally, you know, 4 days away from booking flights, thankfully. And it's like, no, everything's in shut down. But like you say, trying to take the positives out of that, I would never have started this channel if all that had gone the way it did. And this channel's brought me so much joy because I've gotten to chat to so many people that I look up to and respect and admire and just connect with about creativity and art and the things that we love. So, you know, while I still would have loved to have gone to LA for a big premiere, I'm grateful for what came out of it.
What's going to happen with the film now?
It's released in the States on video on demand, and it's done okay. It's called The Perished, and it's a really... It's not the type of film that would have ever done well in a quarantine environment, because everybody's been watching comedies or horror comedies or something that just has a bit of fun in it. Mine is like a bleak, depressing horror drama set in the west of Ireland. So, like, just not good timing.
Oh my gosh.
But
you never know. You still don't know what's going to happen. So
exactly, the thing about films is, I was saying this to somebody the other day. Film is a bizarre one. I think I was saying this to Sean Haberley. The thing about films is, there's a film that came out in 1982 called Night Beast. It was a straight to video thing. It was not very good. It was a guy shot it in his backyard for like $25,000 with his mates, and nobody knew about this film for like 30 years. And then someone found it and went on a horror podcast and said, oh, I saw the greatest movie ever. And then people are going around wearing Night Beast t-shirts, and it's gotten this revival and everybody's talking about it. And it's like, so like, what I try to remind myself when stuff like that happens, and it's like, oh, well, maybe it's not going to do as well as I'd hoped. I'm like, but maybe in 30 years people will be looking for a bleak, depressing Irish horror drama.
You never know. I can't. I mean, I've had like 3 times in my life where I thought I wanted to kill myself. That time where the game, I thought, that's it. I'm not doing it now. And then I did I had shot like a demo commercial for Trident Sugarless Gum.
Yeah.
And do you have that in?
We don't have Trident here, but when I went to the States, it's a big deal.
That's it. And the commercial, well, in any case, I had done a demo of it, and then I went off to do a play in Dallas, Texas. And I was literally the last weekend, the Friday of my last weekend of the play, I got a call that my agent wanted me to come back to New York to shoot the commercial on that Friday. And I said, can they do it on Monday? I'll be done with the show on Sunday. And they said, no, it has to be this Friday. And I thought, oh God, no. And I thought, how can I get out of this show? It was a 4-character play. And the unions in America, if you have 4 actors in a play, they don't have to have an understudy.
Okay.
There were no understudies. And so I kept thinking, how can I get out of this? And I kept thinking, I could tell them maybe somebody died. And I had to go back for a funeral or something.
Yeah.
They're going to find out. There's no way I'd get away with that, because they would have to close the play. There's no way they could do the play. So I had to tell my agent I can't do it. So again, I was really, really, really depressed. And then this was in like November or like September or November of that year. He calls me like in December saying, your commercial is going to be on the Super Bowl. I went, what commercial? It turned out that the one that I had done as a demo commercial, they used it. That was the one that they used the most. What happened was the other people that were in the commercial and I would have been doing was they shot 3 other commercials around that one. So I would have made more money, but the one that I did became a huge successful commercial. It won like a Clio Award.
Oh my God!
It was shown like forever. I made a fortune off of it.
Nice.
And so again, it's like, who knew? I thought for sure that I just basically blew a lot of money because the commercial wasn't going to happen, and it happened after all. So it's just like you never know.
Oh man, these are the stories that I live for. Just because, I mean, the industry that I've chosen, like I used to be a game developer, which was a much more potentially lucrative area. You know what I mean? But in 2014, I just decided I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to write films. I wanted to make films, and it's been a slow, hard road, which I always tell people, like, that's what it is. Unless you're very, very, very lucky, it takes a while, and you just got to keep at it and keep determined. But I love these stories because it just reminds you that, like, you just never know what's right around the bend or what could happen. As I say, there could be something with that movie where it suddenly becomes this big cult success that everybody talks about. You just don't know.
Luck is so much. I mean, you know, with everything in life, I sometimes think the reason people love religion as much as they do is that they don't like the idea that luck is so much a part of things.
Yeah.
They want to somehow believe, you know, if I believe, everything's going to happen. Because, God, you just...
It's funny that you say that, though, because I found that in my darkest moments, I wouldn't consider myself a very religious person, but yet I found that in my darkest moments, I've gone, please, I promise, I'll go to church on Sunday, I'll do this, please. Like, even though, as I say, in my day-to-day, I'm not traditionally very religious.
I
know. But just before we came on as well, when I was asking you about your name because I didn't want to butcher it too horrendously, you said you were from the Midwest, which I've only been to the States once. It was this year. It was January of this year, right before everything went to hell, and I went to Kansas City for a festival called Panic Fest. This one back here, where our film was having its North American premiere. I landed in New York, went straight from New York to Kansas City, and just got all that sweet Midwest charm. Like, the people in Kansas City were just like the nicest people. I don't know if I went to New York or to LA starting out, if I would have gotten the same kind of, like, feeling like everybody's one step away from me inviting you back home, you know, for barbecue.
Yeah, I love Kansas City. My wife worked there a bunch of times. She was an actress.
Yeah.
So I used to go visit her when she was doing shows there. Yeah, it's a great city.
It is, and it's, as I say, it's
really different than New York.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's funny because, as I say, it would not have been my first, like, thought of, like, where do I want to go in the US? Kansas City, that's where I want to go. But it worked out really well because one of my friends who's also a filmmaker, we've kind of come up together, our first shorts premiered together, and she's from Kansas City. And so when I landed there in January, she was shooting her first feature film, and she was like, oh, come to set and visit set and meet the actors and hang out and see how we do things. And I was just thrilled. I was like, I love being on other people's sets because you learn so much about what you can do better or worse by visiting other people's sets. But it was just a joy. And, like, again, I can't believe that kind of kismet, somebody that I just met through Facebook, that we premiered our shorts together, and then 6 years later we're like, I'm on set for her first feature.
Chance, you know, I was actually trying to write something about all that because I've become obsessed with it. So much of, you know, they always used to say to be a successful actor, you need, like, I think, who was it? Someone famous said you need 20% talent, 50% work, and then the other 40% is luck.
Yeah.
You know? And I really believe that's true.
I very much am the same. You just, like, and I always tell people, like, obviously you have to put the work in, and obviously you have to hone your craft and all that stuff. But even if you do that, there are people out there who have made the greatest things that you could possibly ever see or, you know, listen to or whatever, that you will never see or hear of because they just didn't have that bit of luck. And maybe going back to just using Van Gogh as an example, maybe not in this lifetime, but maybe 5 generations from now, people are like, this dude was a genius, you know.
Exactly.
But kind of jumping back to Red Dead, so you talked a little bit about that first experience, which, as I say, that sounds crazy because, like, being in such a tough situation, like being injured, and then, I mean, it maybe helped a little bit to some extent that Strauss was, as you say, a lot of the times that you met him was sitting down with his notepad.
Someone asked me the other day, does he ever walk?
He walks pretty fast in his departure, but yeah, like the experience of filming, you guys were getting your. I've heard this from other cast members, but you weren't getting the scripts up front. Like, you were getting them drip fed to you.
Exactly.
So, I mean, your first experience with Strauss, like, what was your thoughts? Like, before you kind of got to know the ins and outs of the character, were you impressed with him, or were you like, who is this guy?
Well, that's the weird thing. See, so I auditioned, you know, I guess this first thing happened in the spring where I broke my leg, but I had auditioned for it maybe in like January, and this had happened like around March of that year, 5 years before it was released. And the scene they gave me, I thought that would be the scene, because a lot of times when you do movie auditions, or any audition, you know, well, with movies in particular, you get a scene, and that's the scene you wind up filming.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I never, for the 5 years, ever did that scene ever. And so I guess they either never used it, or it was just written for the audition, or who knows. But that was what I was expecting to get. But instead, I got the script, which, you know, they only gave you like, I think I only got like a couple of scenes, because they don't give you a lot. And I had no idea. I didn't know what the character was or what they wanted me to be. I only knew what I did at the audition, which was a little bit different. I had a scene where I was walking down a street, and I came up to a woman on the street, and I was kind of like, I don't even remember exactly, but I was just, I wasn't the nicest person, but I was kind of like trying to figure her out and trying to bribe her and stuff like that. And so then when I got there, and that first day in particular, I was talking about my childhood and oh, well, I remember all those scenes. They kept saying, you know, you got to be meaner, nastier, colder, icier, you know, just nasty. And that wasn't what I didn't feel like I had done at the audition. So I kind of just went with it. You know, we had a great director, you know, and the writing is really good.
Was this Rad Edge?
Yeah.
I've heard nothing but good things about Rad Edge. Like, anybody that's been on talking to me has praised him, and I've said it that I'm fascinated by the idea of directing something like that, because it's such a, like, it's all about direction, because you need somebody who's gonna tell you what's happening, because you're in a big, effectively empty room with just like props. It's theater. It's the old Vic, like, that's what it is.
and the weird thing too is that they, you know, you get scenes. I remember doing some scenes over the course of 5 years, variations of them over the course of the years, and sometimes you come back to it and you go, what scene is this? I don't remember the scene. And you know that was one of the things that was great about having Roger there on the set all the time, because he really didn't know where everything was going, kind of.
I think. Oh, sorry. I think Sean Haberly said something similar, that like, if you were ever kind of stuck or like, I don't know what's going on, Roger was always a great source to be like, Roger, do you have 2 secs, please, to go through this?
Roger was great at that, because God, I don't know how he kept track of it, to tell you the truth, but at least he had some idea of where things were going. Plus, he knew everybody's relationships, because sometimes I would be doing scenes with people that I would go, who are they? I have no idea who these people are.
But it kind of sounds like, from all I've heard about this production, it sounds like by the end of it, it sounds like the gang, the Outlaws, you guys, literally became incredibly close. Like, you became a little gang by the end of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, partly I think that, you know, they do create a really nice atmosphere to work in. I mean, that's one of the best things about Rockstar, I think, is that it was always just really pleasant and fun, and we had a good time, and we hung out even in the green room and just had fun, and and it was just a great group of people. So it was always a pleasure. But there are so many people that I never wound up even working with, or if I only worked with them, I worked with them maybe one day,
Yeah.
and or it was just weird. You never knew who you were going to be working with, and every time you come to the set, you go, "Oh, I never met you before," but everybody else knew them, and
it's crazy. It's such a big scale production that I find it so hard to like wrap my head around, and the fact that it was shot in such a strange order, and like it's just, but it fascinates me because it just shows me that like obviously somebody, whether it be Rod or whoever, at a writer's level, they knew from the get-go what they wanted and how they were going to achieve it, because like you don't get a product like Red Dead Redemption 2 out of not really knowing where you're going. But I do find it fascinating that everybody just kind of had to come in and get their 2 pages on the day and be like, okay, cool. To me, that's a testament to you guys being fantastic actors, because I think that's a lot harder. Like when people praise performances of you guys in that game, it's a lot harder to turn up on the day and deliver a great performance than it is to kind of have weeks and weeks of rehearsals and prep and figuring it out.
in some ways, yeah. I mean, it was always a challenge, but it was always fun. It turned out to be, I never, and I felt like one of the things I was always really good about getting it pretty fast.
Yeah.
So that was always for me a good thing, that I would only have to do a few takes or.
Oh, excellent.
That always made me feel like, hey, that's cool. Because, they would film more than one scene in a day.
Yeah.
And so your part would be done and you go, like, great, I got that done. I can go take a nap.
Into the green room for coffee and a nap.
Yeah, great food. So
oh, that is the most important thing on any set ever. If you're well fed, you'll be happy.
Now I don't know what they're doing. I haven't been on a set, but I know that they can't have those great craft services.
No.
Tables. Tons of food. They won't have that now.
Yeah, I haven't been on a set myself in a long time. One of my friends, my cinematographer that I've worked with for the last 6 years, he's gone back to shooting music videos and a few, but he says it's a world away from what he would traditionally be used to, and like even having to come up with ways that the actors don't have to be physically close. It's like that's why I think I haven't returned, if I'm being honest. I'm like, I'm not clever enough to come up with ingenious things like that. I just want to do it the old way. I just want to stick to what I know. But the funny thing with Strauss as a character is that it's a little bit like Kylie's character, Miss Grimshaw. They are, to some degree, unlikable. Like when you meet them, you're like, this person is not very pleasant. But like I've said this time and time again, but like every character in that game, with the exception of one big one, you kind of grow to like them. Even though because it's like a family, you have members of your family that you don't necessarily always agree on stuff. You don't like certain things that they do, but they're still family and you still care about them. And I find that whether it's yourself or Miss Grimshaw or whoever, people build an affinity, especially the people like me who would just go around camp talking to everybody and learning their stories. Then it gives you that extra dimension that you don't get in a movie where you just meet the character and you get what they're saying and that's it. This gives you like a chance to explore, oh wow, this character is a lot more behind the scenes than I knew.
I have to say, though, that the one thing which, this is the interesting part of it, too. I never even knew this doing it, the whole time I was doing it. But the thing that people hate about me is that I'm responsible for Arthur's death. They kind of, some people, I've had people say really nasty things to me. Like, I feel like I'm Judas, I killed Christ. And then I'm the one who's responsible for it. If I hadn't sent him, and he got TB or whatever. So, I kind of feel like, some people like my character, but I mean, I think a lot of people hate him just because he's responsible for that.
It's interesting though, because like with everything that happens, because I think I'll put a big spoiler warning in the description and everything, but like, I think most people that watch these interviews are generally Red Dead heads anyway. But I think one of the interesting things is when you find out that even to his last breath, Strauss was protecting the camp and protecting,
I know,
like, even after being unceremoniously chucked out, he still was not a turncoat and not willing to give people up, and that to me is what made me like him a bit more. It's a little bit like we said, didn't like him in life, but grew to like him afterwards.
And that's another one where I didn't know that happened. I kind of wish in a way they could have filmed it or something, because the last scene I ever did was the scene where I got kicked out of camp. I did do other things coming back, little bits and pieces of stuff, but that was the last scene.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know that he did that. So I kind of think, I think that's a nice thing that they let him redeem himself somehow.
Exactly, because one of the cool things is the title of the game is obviously is redemption. Everything's rooted in redemption, and like certain characters get that and certain characters don't. But it's nice that Strauss was one of those characters who did kind of redeem himself, even if it was off screen. You did kind of say, oh well, maybe he wasn't such a bad guy after all. But the funny thing is that final scene with you and Arthur, it has one of the best lines in the game, which is, like, sometimes the sick delude themselves. Like, it's such a great, like, for me, coming as a writer, it's such a great thing for someone to say, to try and either manipulatively get the person to calm down, or just to get that one last dig in, to remind him in that moment, oh, guess what, you're on your way out, like. But it's just such a great line.
It's a great line. And the other thing I liked about the writing too, which I thought was great, was because I spend most of the game being just hard and nasty and icy and cold and heartless, but at the end, he really becomes really vulnerable.
Yeah.
And frightened, and
even when he says we were friends, you know what I mean? It's a plea. That's what that is. It's a plea. Like, don't do this.
Yeah, exactly. So that I like that. I mean, I thought that was one of the nice things. I think all the characters, many of them anyway, or most of them, had some kind of an arc.
Yeah.
And that was.
It's funny because every time I talk about all of the characters and how much I love Tilly and I love, Dutch kind of breaks my heart. We won't go there. Dutch broke my heart. But I always say the one character that you just know from day one till the very end of the game that you're like, he's a sneak, I don't like him, is Peter Blomqvist as Micah. But he plays it so well, you know what I mean? People don't realise the skill in being such a horrible person in something like this. It's if you hate them, they've done their job right,
Yeah, and he had a lot of fun with it. I mean, I'll tell you the truth, the roles that I thought were the most fun was his role, and I really loved the Reverend, because
oh yes,
that again, it was just such an interesting character.
Yeah. And he had a good arc as well. I actually just spoke to Sean recently, and like, he had a great arc as well of redemption, of turning his ways around and kind of, and as you say, I think, and even Miss Grimshaw, similarly, like, she starts out so cold and you just think, God, she's horrible to all the women in the camp and she's so mean. And then that tender moment between her and Tilly, and you're like, oh, okay. Maybe, all the characters, as I say, with the exception of maybe Micah, do something to kind of make you go, maybe I read this character wrong. Even Bill, I love giving Steve kind of shit about this, but like, Bill seems so unlikable, but then like when they're sitting at the campfire and they're joking about like what's your name, and he tells them, and it's the John Wayne thing of like having a girl's name. There's such a vulnerability in Bill in that moment that it's hard to think like, oh, he's horrible and he's nasty. You're like, oh, he's just a guy. He's just, he might try to act like the big bully and everything, but he's actually just he's just totally insecure about himself. And that's something that, as I say, this game does really well, is it shows you characters that you have seen a million times in Westerns, but what you think looking at them on the outside is not what you get when you play through it. Did you are you a gamer at all, or did you play the game, or did you?
That's why it's kind of weird. It was kind of weird even making this thing because everybody else seemed to be. I am a bit older, and we didn't have video games when I was a kid, so I've never played one. And my son has played them.
Yeah.
He's 20 now, and he's played this game a ton of times. But I would watch him play, but I don't even really quite know how to use the whole. And
it's a high barrier of entry because they've spent 30 years developing these controllers to the point that now, if you grow up with it, yeah, it feels like driving a car. Everyone knows. Right. But I always try to remind myself that like anybody who's coming into that for the first time, whether it be my kids who are 5 and 9 and they're picking up one of these things, and it's like the cockpit of an aeroplane to them.
So I kind of feel bad that I've never played it. I mean, I kept thinking during this pandemic that I would, that's what I'll do is I'll play the game, and I never did.
The one thing that's great about the age that we live in now, though, is you can just watch them as well. Like so many people do that; they just watch video games. I think that shows you how video games have progressed. Because I mean, I don't think people would have sat down and watched 6 or 8 hours of Pong when it first released, or Centipede. But like they're now people who literally they don't watch TV; they just sit down and watch people play video games.
Yeah, I used to watch my son play it all the time, and I was always just like so blown away by how real it looked.
It's incredible.
I don't really know how they did that.
It's such a testament to all the animators and everybody, and I've kind of told this before as well, but I just think it's such a nugget of wisdom that I like to bring it up whenever I can. My mother, who, she's watched me play video games growing up, and she's never really been into them. She played a couple on the NES back in the day. But she was watching me play, I think it might have been an Assassin's Creed game or something, which was set in like Rome. And she was like, "This is a time machine." And I was like, What do you mean? What are you talking about, ma'am? And she's like, "It's a time machine. You're in ancient Rome. Like, there's no way you could be in ancient Rome. Like, you can't watch a movie and be in ancient Rome. You can imagine you are, but like, you're running around climbing buildings that are modeled off ancient Rome." And I was like, that's changed my entire perspective on video games forever.
It's really pretty amazing. It's a culture that I don't. I just am amazed by it, but I just never experienced it really.
I think that like it's funny because a few of the cast members that I've spoken to aren't gamers, and I think that's good because I think people have this expectation of everybody that's involved in something fully knows what they're doing and what it is and all the rest of it. And I think it's nice when you hear the stories about like, well, no, up until we did this, I really didn't have any clue even about this, like what this could be. And then, so actually off of that, like when you first got the game home or your son brought the game home and you saw him playing it, like, and you saw your character, climbing onto that bunk in the opening scenes in the cabin, like, what was your reaction to seeing it all together?
Well, yeah, it was nothing like that when we did it. I went like, wow. I used to be amazed watching stuff where you go outside in the snow and you'd see people, the stuff coming out of their mouths, the vapor, and I thought, how do they do that? It's just footprints in the snow when they're walking, and it's just the detail is so incredible.
It is. I was playing it again recently, and I was walking somewhere that had sand. And like that, I stopped for like 2 minutes just looking at, like, I took a step forward and I was like, it actually leaves the footprint of sand behind me. And then that would fade away like it would in reality. I was like, this is insane. Like, that was somebody's job, was just sand,
The other thing that's weird is that so many of the cast members really don't look that much like their characters.
Yes.
But mine looks so much like me. If you took the beard off, plus, I used to, when we first did the game, I was not as gray as I am today, 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And, I look so much like this character, it's kind of scary.
It's funny because I said to Mia Davis, because I kind of forgot, I didn't realize how much you resembled Strauss. And I said to Mia, Mia looks like her character, and, Micah, Peter looks like Micah. I kind of left you out of that equation, but really, when I looked you up earlier in particular, and I was like, oh wow, actually, because it's funny because when I saw a picture, I went, oh, he reminds me of someone. He's really familiar to me. Who is it? And then I was like, all right.
I don't know if that's a compliment or not. But,
no, but it's funny what you say. It, like, certain characters, funny if the bigger characters like John and Rob, and to some extent Dutch, they don't necessarily resemble, Roger and Rob and Ben. But then, as you say, there's some characters that it's just that bit closer, and I don't know whether that's a testament to you guys, like that they went like, oh, they've got the look that we want for the character, or whether it's like, because what did Mia say? She was like, they couldn't even come up with a face to make for me.
And I think it got to look more like me as we were working on it. Year after year, I would see little things where I go, oh, yeah, that really started to look a lot like me. I think, as they developed it, it just became more and more.
I'd say there was maybe, with certain characters, they probably looked at it and they went, wait a minute, maybe they had a different vision right out the gate, but then they went, actually, exactly. The actors are quite, right for the part. Because, I mean, obviously, with someone like Kylie, she's not going to look like Miss Grimshaw. It's just not going to be the case. And, like, it's funny because I think when you get to know the people behind the parts, you can kind of see little elements of, like with Rob, I see little elements of Rob and John. You know what I mean? But it's still like, as he says, he's walking on the street, nobody's going to say, you're John Marston from Red Dead Redemption,
And the thing is, too, is that when I met him, and everyone said, he was in Red Dead Redemption 1, I didn't even know that was a game. So I didn't know who he was. I didn't know what this game was. I didn't know when they said I'm in Red Dead Redemption 2. I didn't know, I didn't know that there was one. So, and yeah, he doesn't look really like him, so it's really interesting. I mean, it's just amazing what they can do.
It is. It's just. I mean, I came from a game dev background, but we were making small little 2D characters running along, like hand animated. So when I try to think about something jumping from that scale of 4 people in an office to that, I'm like, no, I can't even fathom. Like, you have to have incredible forces at the top to make something like that come together, because, as you say, there's thousands of people putting this thing together.
Yeah, it's incredible. I really don't know how they do it.
Just like, as I say, stuff with the script was drip fed out to you guys, right? And as I say, we come to learn at the end of Strauss's journey that he is actually very loyal to Dutch and the Vanderlyn gang and everyone, But, like, was there any points? I think that most actors have this experience, but was there any points where you went, I can actually relate to this character and I can put something of myself in this character? Or with Strauss, was he just too detached from you? Was he just everything you're not?
Yeah, I'm not a whole lot like him.
You don't go beating people up for money, no?
No, I wouldn't say.
But even his loyalty, is that something that you maybe...
I related to is the fact that when things are going bad toward the end there, how desperate he's getting and how how scared and frightened, and that I could relate to. But I think early on, all the scenes that I had, I mean, I've played a lot of nasty, cold people, so it's like, I guess maybe there's something of that in me. But he's like Ebenezer Scrooge or something.
Yes.
I played, so I can relate to it, but I don't really feel like, I never really felt like, oh, I can really relate to this character.
Yeah, I get you. I mean, it's different with someone like Mia and Tilly, where it's like there is this like instant thing where you can connect that. Whereas it's funny because what you just said there about, you're not, you've played a lot of horrible people, but I always find that the people that play horrible people are usually the nicest people.
Yeah, sure.
Because it's fun to play. It's fun to pretend and be.
Oh, yeah. Frankly, it's more fun, I think.
Yes.
It's one thing, I think, like, if you play, if your character is like, if you're living a character every day, like, well, even like Roger, getting to do that character straight through for days on end for 5 years, that's a whole different thing. But I think most characters are just more fun when they're different. I mean, that's.
I can relate because this is my first feature film, right? It's a Irish dark comedy gangster movie, effectively. But in it, one of the actors that was supposed to be in it, playing a character called Uncle Harry, kept not turning up. And so this happened, I don't know, 5 times, and I was like, I'm sick of it. We're gonna run behind schedule. I'll do it. It's not a big part. I'll hop in. I'll do the role. And Uncle Harry is a piece of work. He's nasty, because he's the worst kind of nasty, because he's sneaky and deceitful, and he promises you one thing and he does something else. And what I didn't realize was, when I said I'd do it back in 2016, and it was a couple of scenes and it'd be fine, we took it to a producer who was like, you're gonna have to do like 70% reshoots on this to get it to a level that we'd be able to sell it at and everything. And so then we went back to reshoots and rewrote the script and everything, and it was like, now Uncle Harry has a way bigger part, so now I've locked myself into 3 years of being this character. But I was at a screening in Canada, and somebody walked up to me after the screening and said, like, I don't know whether to shake your hand or spit in your face. And I said, that's all I needed to hear, thank you very much. And I don't consider myself an actor at all. That's the funny thing. Like, I have done some acting, because I've always said, if you're gonna be this side of the camera, you have to go that side of the camera to understand what it's like for actors,
Oh god! I did an audition today. I had to do a Zoom audition.
Oh wow!
For a TV show, and I could not figure out how to get the other actor to do the scene with it, because all I was looking at was myself, and I kept saying, I can't do this scene to myself. And I did like 3. I had to do 3 takes to try to get the technology to I don't know. It's crazy. What a crazy world this is.
Exactly. It's a world where 90% of your interactions take place on a screen, whether it's a phone screen or a computer screen.
Yeah. Now I've been doing these I mean, there are these plays that are done on Zoom.
I did not know about this.
In room, and you're all acting with each other, but you're in like different houses and different wherever. Not to mention, if you don't, the cool thing is you don't have to necessarily memorize your lines.
Yeah.
You can actually scroll while you're acting. I'm looking right here. You can't tell that I'm actually reading.
Exactly. Eyeline is still good.
It's just another world. It's changed.
That's actually super interesting, though. I never really thought about that, because I have a lot of friends who play like Dungeons and Dragons, and they've taken to this new Zoom thing fantastically. They're like, this is great, we can now just play big games of Dungeons and Dragons, like 8 of us, whenever we want on Zoom. But I've never thought about like plays and stuff. That's because I've even seen a couple of the movies that have been done where it's just webcams.
What's cool is that, so you feel in a way like you're the tech person, but you're doing all the props and everything. Like if you have to throw something at somebody, you have to have your thing here, and you go like this, and then the other person has one.
That's amazing.
It's kind of bizarre, but it works somehow.
That's interesting. I mean, actually, it sounds like you've done quite a bit of theater work.
That's what I've done most of, I think.
That's pretty fantastic, though, and I think it sounds to me like, from some of the people that I've interviewed, it sounds like Rockstar really sought out, for a lot of these parts, theater actors, it felt like.
Yeah, well, that's the other interesting thing, which it was kind of surprising when I first went on the set. I kept feeling like, this is too big for film. The acting style is a little more theatrical to some degree.
Yeah.
And there were times where I kept feeling like, am I too big? It just feels like we're like almost projecting in a way, which is what you do in the theater. And, but yeah, because my first instinct was, I'm on film. I did everything very internalized.
Yeah.
I said, no, harder, stronger, bigger,
Yeah.
So.
But it's just interesting, because even, like, as I say, yourself and Mick, Mick Malanfi, who I had on, like, really well versed in theatre acting. And as I say, it does feel like, in a lot of ways, from what I've heard, it does, that idea of, props made out of styrofoam or whatever it is, and just having to be like, yes, this is real, that is the essence of theatre. That's what, they were doing in the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, in that style of like, this is what I'm telling you it is. That was what they were doing in the 1920s, 1930s. Now they have all the fancy props and stuff, but like, they didn't.
What I thought was the coolest thing about doing it? It was the only experience I've ever had. It felt like when I was a little kid, and you would play, like, let's play War, or let's play House, or let's play Doctor, or whatever. You were just kind of improvising outside, and, there was nothing there, really, but you pretended like there was. And it was the same kind of thing when we were working on the game.
That's very cool. I think, yes, Steve said something similar about, like, his first audition. They were like, just get dressed up like a cowboy and run around pretending, like, this was for Red Dead 1, and it was like, just get dressed up like a cowboy and run around pretending, and he was like, this is great, I feel like I'm 7 again, this is fantastic.
It's also cool is that you don't have, like, when you're doing a film and you have to, like, hit marks. Sometimes you had to, but for the most part, it was this big cavern. Yeah. And you were, you knew where you were, but you kind of, that you didn't have to worry about a camera looking at you here, and it's just very freeing. There's something really liberating.
I think that's why I'm so fascinated with it, because as I say, I'm really become super fascinated with motion capture, with performance, motion performance. And I think it's because it just feels like the purest form of acting outside of theater. Like, I think I was telling somebody this, but I'm lucky enough that in 2021, if the world resumes its course, and we go back to the good dimension, they're a group of friends of mine from Italy, they're making a sequel to their first game, and it's gotten a bit bigger, and they're like, we're going to be filming some mocap stuff in London, and if you want to come and help out on set and be a runner or whatever, you're more than welcome. And I was like, absolutely. I'm just so fascinated by this world that I would gladly turn up on set and just make the tea. And, yeah.
I would love to. I never think would ever get tired of doing it. And I really love to do. When I think about things like Lord of the Rings, where Gollum and all that stuff, that's where I really would like to do is something, because it's so transformative. You can kind of, again, it's like you can just do whatever. And
exactly.
Create it somehow, make it look like something amazing.
It is. It's a bold new world for sure. So, are there any kind of funny or interesting stories from set that you can think of? Like anything that jumps out?
Well, I do think. Well, the one thing was in the only shootout that I ever was in, because that's the one thing that Strauss doesn't do a lot of. I remember that they had to like have me crouch down, and it was, there wasn't anything there, but I had to crouch and then jump up and run. And we did that all day, and I was in so much pain. I couldn't walk for like a week afterward. And I also was afraid that I would look like a total idiot, because toward the end of the day I was, my muscles were aching and my legs were hurting me. And I did see that when we were watching it, and it actually looked really good, so I was kind of amused. But that was cool. The other thing was Roger had to pick me up, and carry me, and because I'm pretty much we're about the same size, and the fact that he could do that, I kept thinking, this is like unreal. But yeah, he did. He picked me up. He carried me. He threw me into the truck.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, it just sounds like I think it might have been Rob that said it, but like, just it sounds like something that it really is the definition of, if you weren't there, it's very hard to tell you what it was like, because it was something otherworldly, basically.
Yeah, it really is. It's I'm so glad I had that experience, and I would love to do it again, or do something like it again in a film or a video game again or something. It's a really fun way to work.
It sounds it. And I mean, you've been involved over the years as well. Like, we talked about your theatre work, but you've also done a lot of TV guest appearances, and but like, I can imagine that this was a very different beast.
Totally.
Like, from Law and Order to Red Dead, I imagine they're two very different worlds.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you're really doing film. And I kept thinking the whole time we were doing it, it's like, God, this is so theatrical. It just doesn't feel like a film.
Yeah.
And yet it looks like it when you're watching it. So
I think that's why it encapsulates the best thing, right? Because growing up, my dad wasn't much of a movie. Like, it's funny because I love arts, I love reading, I love all things fiction, basically, if I'm being honest. But my dad was like, if it's not a biography or a documentary that happened in reality, I don't want to know about it. But he had exceptions to that rule. There was a handful of comedies, like in the 80s we would watch like all the Steve Martin comedies, so like The Jerk and Planes, Trains and Automobiles, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels. They were the big three. But then his other thing was westerns. Like, he loved westerns, and so we would sit down and we'd watch like all the Clint Eastwood ones in particular, like Outlaw, Josie Wales. I was watching them way too young to be as well, because like High Plains Drifter is not a kid's movie. But what I found when I played Red Dead was like so many things try to encapsulate that feeling of those Western movies and kind of fail to. Whereas Red Dead feels like not only is it paying tribute to them, but it's that kind of standing on the shoulders of giants thing. It's paying that legacy forward.
Yeah. People keep saying that they should make a movie out of it,
They should, especially with this. I've always thought, why, I've always kind of said, if people want to see the story, they can just play the game, which is a really, really elitist way to think about stuff. And I've noticed that, like, there's a game called The Last of Us, which was very successful, and now they have the guy who wrote Chernobyl, Craig Mazin, doing a Last of Us TV show for HBO. And my initial thought was, oh, for God's sake, they're going to... And then I went, like, a friend of mine said, but do you not think it's good that so many more people will be able to enjoy this story that you love? And I was like, actually, no, that's a really good thing. Like, I'm an idiot.
All my theater friends, most of them don't play games, so they don't know what this is. I keep saying, I'm in this really successful video game called Red Dead Redemption 2, and they go, what is it called? Red Redemption? What is it?
That's my daughter as well, though. My daughter is like, Red Dead Redemption. I'm like, that's not it, no.
People don't know about it. So, yeah, I think it would, it would be great. It would be a great film.
I think so as well. And it feels like of all the video games, because it's already inherently cinematic, it wouldn't hurt in the transition to film. Whereas I think a lot of games, when they tried to make Super Mario Brothers in the 90s with Bob Hoskins, and it's like, Super Mario is a plumber jumping on mushrooms, and it doesn't lend itself to like, okay, I've got a great film idea for this. Whereas Red Dead,
the hard thing would be to encapsulate this mammoth.
You're right. It should be a Netflix TV series. I agree.
A miniseries.
Okay, I'll start pitching it. No worries. Look, I've done all the interviews. Just give me the TV show, okay?
Mind doing it. I think I could just start my
speaking of TV though, like what, like even get as it's like shows like Law and Order, which are cultural cornerstones. You know what I mean? This is a show that like multiple generations sit down to watch. You know what I mean? Like it's not just it's not like other. It's a 4-quadrant show. Like everybody sits down to watch stuff like Law and Order. What was it like turning up and being part of that world? Like, were you a fan of the show? And
well, yeah. I mean, the thing is with those shows, it seems like every New York actor was in one episode or another. So yeah, it was, and that was fun. It was another fun set, and I remember the one I did with Jerry Orbach. That was so much fun to work, because he was kind of an idol of mine to begin with, because he had done so much theater before he did that show.
Yeah.
So that was exciting, and then doing the one with Vincent D'Onofrio, Criminal Intent. That was a lot of fun. I mean, they're just they're. The good thing about them is you make a lot of money.
Yes.
The residuals, I still get residuals from them.
Oh, that's incredible.
And sometimes I go like, you keep, because most of the time you get residuals by the time, 20 years goes by, you're getting like 12 cents or something.
Yes, yeah.
Every now and then you'll get this check for like, a huge amount of money, and you go, oh my God, I can't believe it.
It's going back to your stories about luck earlier. I have a friend, an actor friend, who was in my first ever short film, and he had a small part in Batman: The Dark Knight Rises, and he had a small part in World War Z. But the funny thing is, the small part he got in World War Z, which is he was a cop on a motorbike, his job was you drive up, you tell Brad Pitt to stay in his car, and then a truck comes and cleans you out. And he's like, no problem. And they give him he's paid, and he's like, this is a handsome sum, I'm happy with this. But then they come back, like, this is that luck thing you're talking about, like a year later after he shot everything, they come back and they're like, we're actually going to use your shot where you get hit by the truck in the trailer, so now we're going to pay you more money. And he's just like, great.
The one I did, the Criminal Intent one, I made so much money because I was only hired to film for 3 days, but Vincent D'Onofrio's sister or somebody got very sick. In any case, the 3 days wound up being 3 weeks.
Okay.
And they paid you for every day that you were holding for 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So not only did you get all that money, but that even made the residuals bigger because you made,
Yeah.
So yeah, it became really lucrative.
So there we go. TV is the way to go. I have a lot of actor friends. They'll want to hear this stuff. So actually, yeah, I kind of staying with kind of the TV and film work that you've done. I will tell you that I haven't seen Trivia Night, but I've looked it up, and I'm kind of fascinated, and I really want to see it now.
You should see it. It's really, I think it's a small film, but it's really fun and clever and really different from anything else. And I really had a lot of fun. That character is really kind of, that was a fun character to play.
It looks great from everything I saw of it. I love it kind of has the feel of like an indie film. And
it's very indie.
And the thing is, I feel like especially nowadays, the sting has been taken out of that. I think, 10, 15 years ago, people would say, oh, it's like an indie film, and it would mean, oh, it looks cheap and it looks low budget and etc. But I think we live in an age now where, like, especially going forward with everything that's happening with the blockbusters at the moment, people, I think indie is more worn as a badge of honor now. Like, oh, we made this with a very small amount of money, and it's just heart and love poured into it. Yeah. But I just, I mean, can you tell us anything about Trivia Night that might incite people to go out and check it out? Because as I say, I've checked it up and it looks very entertaining.
You can still see it on Amazon Prime or Amazon, I think. I think it's still there. Yeah, I just think it's a fun film. It's a really small film about this guy who's like a trivia whiz. I mean, this kid is like a genius. And this game is some bizarre game where nobody has ever won the big prize. They deliberately make it so hard. Each question becomes so difficult, so that by the time you get to the 10th big question, there's like no way anybody could do it. And so he somehow surmounts the odds, and he becomes like the only person who's ever beaten Trivia Night. It's funny and clever and fun, and plus he's a real nerd. I mean, he's not necessarily likable because he is such a nerd. He's such a success. He's got this trivia tunnel vision, and but he manages to pull it off. So it's kind of redeeming. It's his own Red Dead Redemption.
I definitely, I'm going to add it to the list on Amazon Prime to check out anyway, because as I say, when I started looking it up, I was like, this definitely looks like my kind of weird, quirky, eccentric brand of humor, and I just like those kind of out there stories. Like one of the things you just said, I like protagonists who are not inherently likable. I always get that note when I bring my scripts into places. They're like, this person's not very likable. I'm like, yeah, but have you met most people? Not trying to be bad, but everybody has an element that is to somebody else going to grate on them, or whatever, or people are going to look out for their own self-interest at times, and that's what the entirety of this film is about. It's about two lads that just they seem like they're the worst scumbags in the world because they don't really give a crap about anything but themselves, but then you realize, you're like, well, if I was in that situation, I'd probably only give a shit about saving myself as well, and to me, those are the protagonists that I gravitate to, is more human.
Yeah, there are a lot. There's so, that's the other thing that's so sad about the film industry, is that there's just so many great films that nobody will ever see, and they're on Amazon or somewhere.
Yeah.
You can find them, but it's like, but who knows? 20 years from now, suddenly the film might become like a blockbuster or something, but it's not going to happen. I mean, it's such a strange thing that I don't know. It's just. It was always like that. Maybe there were always all these. I mean, back in the old Hollywood days, they made hundreds of films that nobody's ever heard of today.
Yeah. What's interesting is they are still being discovered, though, by all these like niche podcasts and stuff. I listen to a bunch of horror podcasts where they'll be like, so I found this movie from 1934, and they'll talk about it, and you'll be like, what the hell? Like, and then that suddenly sparks this interest of everybody's like, well, I gotta see it now because they said it's really interesting or good. And that's the funny thing, is to think, as you say, for 40 years from now, they're sitting down on a podcast and they're like, we're talking about films from the 2000s that had like, unlikable protagonists or something, and they suddenly dig out these movies, and as you say, there is an unending torrent of films and content and media going out at the moment. But the hope is that someday, somehow, someone will unearth it and go, my God, this is the best thing I've ever seen. How has nobody ever talked to me about this? That's all we can hope for, I think. But then it's funny because the flip side of that is something like Red Dead 2, which is just a cultural phenomenon, and people who have no rights even knowing what it is know what it is. But that's kind of one of the last things that I kind of want to ask you about, is like, what has the fan support been like? What has it been like to interact with the Red Dead fans? Because they are, from what I've seen, an incredible group.
They're amazing. I mean, the artwork that people have done, some of that blows me away. Some of the people that are on Instagram and on Twitter and stuff that have done this incredible artwork, and and then there's this one guy who does. It's called Daily Leopold Strauss. Have you ever checked that out?
I haven't actually, but I must edit.
Every single day he does a different. He does a different Leopold Strauss thing, and some of them are hysterically funny. But they're all different. I keep saying, how do you do this? Every single day he has a different one.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, they're all, they're obsessed, but they're great, and some of the work is just beautiful.
I think that's the interesting thing, is that, like, to the average person looking at the game or watching stuff about it or whatever, they're not going to think, well, Leopold Strauss is somebody's favorite character. You know what I mean? Same as they probably would say the same about Mick, or they would say the same about, But then there's somebody out there, or multiple people, obviously, that are like, I love this character. I just absolutely love this character. And that's so fascinating. Like,
it totally blows my mind sometimes. I just think, God, and it's like, it's just so strange and weird, but it's cool.
That's amazing. Howard, I want to say a massive thank you for coming on and chatting with me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Do you have a Twitter or Instagram or anything? I will put the links in the description for where people can check you out.
Oh yeah, Twitter it's how5555, and Instagram it's Howard Pinhasik at Howard Pinhasik.
Perfect. I will stick. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that would be cool to see it. I would love to see this thing.
Oh, absolutely.
Is it on YouTube as well? Or?
Oh yeah, this will be up on YouTube, and then I'll link people off to check you out and follow you, and where they can
I did one for an Italian one that to this day I have no idea what it says because I didn't understand any of the Italian. But they asked me questions, and then I hope they translated me correctly.
You never know. There's people in Italy now that are like, "How are Pinhasik?" No.
It'd be fun. It's just a lot. It was great doing this. It was really fun.
It's been my pleasure. And as I say, wishing you every success with everything moving forward. I know we're in an uncertain time right now, but things will improve, and it would be great to I'm sure for you, it will be onwards and upwards as well with new work. And
thanks so much. Good luck with all these films and everything. I hope you finally get a big premiere and come back to the States. If you do, look us all up.
Oh, definitely. I've already said that to so many of the other cast that I've chatted. I'm like, next time I go to the US, I'm just going to get like an RV and just drive around and visit all the Red Dead folks.
Well, most of us are either in New York or in Los Angeles, except for Rob, who's in Indiana.
I'll just stop off at Rob on the way, so... But, like, I will say, like, I am... During lockdown, I've kind of... I hit that point of, like, do I even want to be a filmmaker anymore? Is it worth it? And is it worth all the effort? And I just said it to my wife today in the car, which is why I'm saying it now. I said, I know I'm only saying all this stuff because... I can't, as in because I can't go out and do it. And I know that the second that all the restrictions are lifted and things go back to normal, the first thing I'm going to say is, I've got an idea, let's go make it. So I have to remind myself that I'm talking a lot of rubbish to myself when I say this stuff.
There's going to be, once all this is over, there's going to be this renaissance, I think, of everything. Film, theater, you name it.
Absolutely. It's going to be like I was talking about it, because stuff is struggling at the moment. But it's like in the 60s when they made all those big epics and some of them weren't, hugely successful. So then the 70s was all the weird art house, amazing indie cinema. I think that's where we're heading, is there's going to be all this amazing indie weird art house stuff.
It's going to be like the Dark Ages, and then the Renaissance happened.
Yes. But, okay, I'm going to call this off here. But Howard, thank you so much. And guys, please do me a favor. If you're watching the video and you've enjoyed this interview, please hit the subscribe button. I always get this wrong because of the nerd. And stick around for everything we got coming. And check Howard out at the links that there we go. And check Howard out at the links. And as always, you guys, let's survive together and peace out. Thanks so much, Howard.
Thank you. It was fun.